Our coalition is on the offensive. ISIL is on the defensive, and ISIL is going to lose.
President Obama goes to Congress for a go-ahead to use force against the Islamic State. I'm Dwayne Brown. What the president wants and Republican reaction tonight on KPBS Evening Edition.
And I'm Peggy Pico with analysis of President Obama's request for Congress to authorize military action against ISIS. Then, San Diego-based Sempra Energy and the wealthy Mexican national who gave money to San Diego politicians, how an investigative report links them together.
Also tonight, part 2 of our look at efforts to save the northern white rhino. Could a frozen zoo keep the animal from extinction? KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. President Barack Obama says he will not repeat the ground wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, but he is asking Congress to authorize military action against the Islamic State. He says he's not asking to deploy ground troops, but he wants enough flexibility to wage a battle likely to take some time.
Now, make no mistake, this is a difficult mission, and it will remain difficult for some time. It's going to take time to dislodge these terrorists, especially from urban areas. But our coalition is on the offensive. ISIL is on the defensive, and ISIL is going to lose.
Obama's proposal would authorize the use of military force for 3 years, and it wouldn't be limited by national borders. House Speaker John Boehner says the proposal is likely to be changed by Congress.
The president's point is that he wants to dismantle and destroy ISIS. I haven't seen a strategy yet that I think will accomplish that.
Peggy Pico joins us with analysis of the president's announcement today.
Here with a closer look at the next steps is my guest, Deepak Gupta, SDSU Distinguished Professor of Political Science. And Deepak, the U.S. has been conducting airstrikes against the so-called ISIS state since August. Why is the president asking Congress for authorization for military force against ISIS now?
Well, I think it's a political move on his part because, for one thing, what has happened is that the Republicans have been complaining that he's working outside the bounds of the Constitution, and people like Ted Cruz and many others, and there is a segment of the American population who believe that he should have some bounds on his power, and this also is on the left as well. So I think this is a political move on his part to get the Congress involved in real public policy discussion.
Sure. This new authorization, could it change? Is it a change for U.S. strategy in the fight against ISIS?
I don't think so. No. I really don't think so, because it is only going to be formalizing what all the options that we have. Right now, the president does not have any real authority to go into Syria and bomb ISIS's position. But this will allow him to go into Syria if the need would arise, with 100,000 or 200,000 military personnel on the ground.
You were talking about the possible, the political balance of this. What about the political ramifications of this move?
The political ramification is that he will force the Congress, which has been taking, the GOP in particular, who have been taking pot shots against him as the opposition party, it will force them to come to the table with him and engage him in a dialogue and be part of the decision. So if things go right, usually the president takes responsibility. I mean, the credit for
Sure.
it. And if it doesn't, it provides them with a cover.
An outlet, which
An
would be
outlet.
the Republican side. How much, you touched on this, how much of a battle do you think this will be between the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress?
I believe that the GOP will engage in a very spirited debate. However, after a little discussion and fireworks, they will coalesce around the idea that the president needs to have this power.
Do you think that the president's strategy on this will make an impact in dismantling ISIS?
I really strongly believe that ISIS will face demise fairly soon because it has created more enemies than it knows what to do with. It's a really narrowly defined area of Sunni Islam, and so all the Shias, even the Sunnis, are scared about this movement. It has been brutal. It has shown incredible disregard for all things that we hold sacred in humanity, and therefore I think that it is destined to be forgotten and destroyed, just like Zarqawi's group, which preceded this group. And
Sure.
it happens if you are too virulent, you self-destruct.
This authorization, if approved, would expire in 3 years. Is that an indication that this is a fight that the new president, who will be elected, would have to contend with this issue as well?
Absolutely, because what happens, it's kind of interesting that the War Powers Act was enacted during the Vietnam era to curtail the president's ability to wage war without consulting the Congress, which has the constitutional responsibility of declaring a war. But in this case, the president is in effect asking for a restriction on his power. So the reason being that right now there is a huge disconnect between the president and the Congress, which did not exist during the time of Vietnam. And often, sometimes it was to the detriment of the country. But in this way, I believe that the president will be able to show that the entire United States government is behind his decisions.
I see. Professor of Political Science Deepak Gupta, thanks so much for the update.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
The prognosis is good for CBS 8 sports director Kyle Kraska a day after he was shot outside his home in Scripps Ranch. The station says he's expected to recover. Police say Kraska was in a business dispute with the suspected gunman. 54-year-old Mike Montana was arrested last night after a standoff with a SWAT team in El Cajon. Police say Montana is a painter who'd done work on Kraska's home, but his business license was suspended in 2013, and he filed for bankruptcy protection last year. Montana is scheduled to be arraigned next week. Another partial shutdown is in the works for 29 seaports up and down the West Coast, including San Diego. Dock workers and cargo companies have been in a long labor dispute. The companies say they will suspend loading and unloading of ships through most of the upcoming holiday weekend, so they won't have to pay higher holiday as well as weekend rates to workers. A federal mediator has been trying to help the two sides make a deal. The Navy has reprimanded 3 rear admirals linked to a bribery scheme involving a Malaysian defense contractor. The reprimands are considered career enders. The contractor already pleaded guilty to buying off Navy officials to get business for his company. Navy says the scheme cost taxpayers at least $20 million. Federal defense spending is dominating discussions at the West Coast's largest defense industry gathering right here in San Diego. It's happening at the Convention Center downtown. Top DoD officials are calling for an end to across-the-board spending cuts. Conference organizer Bob Wood says the government and industry are trying to strike a balance.
We have a very good way to understand the needs. We have a very practical and realistic way to look at capabilities, And I think we're having a very important discussion as we look at this next budget as to how to put those things together. That's why the theme of this conference is really achieving the balance between the requirements we have and, frankly, the resources that are available.
Wood says the focus of this year's event is naval operations. He says there isn't a lot of talk about expensive new systems. Many companies are focusing on making existing technologies better. Federal auditors are putting out a warning about the cost of health care for veterans, saying it's a high-risk budget issue and could cost taxpayers billions unless long-standing problems are fixed. Healthcare costs at the VA are more than $59 billion a year. The agency's now on a federal list of possible budget busters, along with a host of Pentagon programs, Medicare, and climate change. Supervisor Bill Horn wants the county to take better care of its service members. The chairman of the board used his State of the City speech last night to declare 2015 the year of the veteran.
According to the data from the Department of Veterans Affairs, 22 veterans kill themselves every day in this country. That number is staggering.
Horn says the county is transforming its Veterans Office into a new military and vet department. He also touted the opening of a new resource center this summer in Escondido. Horn is a veteran. He says he'll hold a meeting to evaluate progress later this year. Ground was broken for that new Veterans Center today. Its offerings will include North County's only program serving homeless vets discharged from the hospital. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg joins us from our North County Bureau. Kenny, who runs the program and why do they need a new facility?
The nonprofit Interfaith Community Services in Escondido runs the program, and they've run it for homeless vets who've been hospitalized but then need post-hospital care since 2010. And during that time, they've served more than 200 vets. The problem is all of the veterans are housed in separate apartments in the community. So it's tough for nurses and doctors and social workers to have to visit all of them separately. And the program is now going to create all of the services in one place.
And tell us about this new facility.
Interfaith Community Services bought this old two-story medical building, and they're gutting it, and they're going to completely renovate it. And when it's all done, it'll house 32 homeless people, including 20 homeless veterans who need post-hospital care, mental health care, other social services, and, of course, temporary housing.
And remind us, where is Interfaith Community Services getting the money to make all this happen?
Some philanthropists donated $550,000 to buy the building, and now Interfaith needs to raise about $2 million more from its donors and from the community to complete the project.
And is the homeless population, Kenny, growing in the North County?
Interfaith people say it is, and in fact, they say on any given night in North County, about 1,600 people are living on the streets, and many of them are veterans.
KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg. ACLU has filed another lawsuit trying to get records from the Department of Homeland Security on how the Border Patrol treated immigrant children in their custody. ACLU claims the treatment was brutal with overcrowding and inadequate food and water. They say they've asked for government records, but there's been no response. It is the second lawsuit they filed in a week. The other asks for records on roving patrols conducted away from the border. Homeland Security has not commented on the lawsuits. California's lieutenant governor is getting an early start on the 2018 race for Jerry Brown's seat. Gavin Newsom has formed an exploratory committee allowing him to start raising money and boost his name recognition. Newsom was just reelected to a second term as lieutenant governor. He has more than $3 million remaining in his campaign account. So what does a Mexican national arrested last year for illegal campaign contributions have to do with San Diego-based Sempra Energy? Peggy Pico explains.
Sempra's shady road to dominance in Mexico is the name of one segment of a three-part investigative report by Voice of San Diego. The in-depth story explains how wealthy businessman José Susumo Azano Matsura is linked to a 7-year battle with Sempra Energy. Details include heavily armed police, the Mexican army, and high-level officials in the U.S. and Mexico. Joining me with highlights from his investigative report is journalist Liam Dillon. And Liam, why is Sempra's natural gas plant near Ensenada in Mexico, why is that a big deal?
Well, it was really the first foothold, or the first major foothold Sempra had in Mexico. And right now, Sempra is one of the largest private energy companies in Mexico. Sempra won a big battle with multiple other Fortune 500 companies to get that natural gas plant built. And so it's really kind of this foothold, the stake that Sempra put in Mexico that's leading to now its current ability to do big things in the country.
And is it being used very much today?
No, actually, there were a lot of changes in the natural gas market since the mid-2000s when it was built, fracking in the United States being one of them, and so it's not being used as much as they had thought. But again, it stands as a symbol, sort of a foothold for the company's ability to do well in Mexico.
Now, you wrote that a Mexican rancher enlisted Azano's help to help him fight Sempra because he said in court that Sempra illegally took his land. Right. What was Azano's involvement in that case?
So the rancher signed a contract with Azano, which is sort of strange. Azano had no connection to Sempra or to this incident at all. This rancher claims that Sempra got a fake deed for this land that the rancher says he owns, and then the rancher didn't have the ability to fight Sempra legally, and so hooked up with Azano, a very wealthy guy who was able to finance the legal fight for this rancher in exchange for a big share of any winnings that might come.
And we're looking at a picture that shows the land and a big sign saying no trespassing and all that. Now, Azano's attorney and Sempra Energy declined our request for this interview, but moving forward, the FBI got involved in this case in a couple of ways. One being that this $7 million quid pro quo accusation against Sempra. What was that accusation and what came of that investigation?
Right. So again, this natural gas plant was a huge deal, a big competition between lots of other companies, lots of other big companies to get this done.
Worldwide.
Worldwide, yes,
sure.
Absolutely. As part of this, there was an allegation based on an internal memo, Sempra memo that the FBI got a hold of that is sort of alleged or indicated that there might have been a quid pro quo, that Sempra would give money to Ensenada causes, City of Ensenada causes, in exchange they would get quicker permits for their natural gas plant. The FBI, again, they initially thought it was an issue investigated based on a Sempra self-investigation, which they relied on for their findings that this was not something that was an issue. So the case ultimately closed.
And there was a hook in that, which people can read in your report.
Right.
So in your report, you also say that Sempra supposedly got the FBI to go after Azano. How did that actually work out, and how do you think that led to Azano giving money to San Diego politicians?
Sure. So, as part of this fight with the rancher, Azano obviously had an interest in Sempra going down, and Sempra alleges, based on some documents they have, that Azano was behind a major raid, a police raid, armed police raid on their natural gas plant in 2011, around the same time that Sempra was under investigation for the FBI. And so we have FBI documents that show while Sempra lawyers were in meetings with the FBI, they asked the FBI to go after Azano for this, alleged extortion attempt. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that led to sort of Azano feeling squeezed, you wrote.
Right. So there are lots of investigations into Azano in the past, but they were on hold by the time that Sempra got involved. And then once Sempra made the request to the FBI, all the investigation is sped up again. Azano, felt that his private jet pilot was being harassed, his daughter or his young child was being patted down at the border, all these things that turned the heat up. And as a result, he went and our investigation found he went to go meet with San Diego politicians to try to turn the Fed's attention back to Sempra.
What is the status right now of Azano's case?
Right, so he's facing charges of campaign finance violations. He's been about a year old, but the case is kind of very slow. They're still in hearings, and he's awaiting a trial. He's pleaded not guilty to those charges.
This is very, very interesting, and so many caveats that we didn't have a chance to go into. So I want to let people know they can read your entire report by following links on our website, kpbs.org. Voice of San Diego investigative reporter Liam Dillon, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
San Diego is home to one of the world's 5 remaining northern white rhinos. Efforts to breed the critically endangered animals have failed, but KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the future of the rhino may be born in a lab.
A truck approaches and the Asian rhino stands and brings its ears to attention.
Hi, Bopu.
Keeper Jane Kennedy, safely in the back of that truck, calls out to the greater one-horned rhino at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park.
Hi, Bo. No, you're not going to come over? So he's in a he's got a defensive posture going on right now.
Bo follows the truck as it backs away. He's an Asian rhino, one of the largest rhino species on the planet, but he is not the most famous. That honor goes to a northern white rhino here named Nola.
She's an awesome animal. She's fantastic.
Nola is one of only 5 northern white rhinos left on the planet. Poaching and war in the Congo snuffed out the species in the wild, and Kennedy says she's nearing the end of her life.
We know we're going to lose her, and we're probably going to lose her sooner, not later. She's essentially 80 years old. So what we're doing is we're developing the best care program we can for her.
The fragility of the species was hammered home in December. That's when the San Diego Zoo Safari Park's northern white male, Angelifu, died. Randy Rikas is the curator of mammals. He says that leaves Nola in a precarious place.
I mean, she's the last. She's it, here in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, when that happened, it was everybody, vet services, research, and animal services all coming together. Okay, what do we need to do? Whatever it takes, So, that's a horrific moment.
Angelifu's death hit especially hard because he was the last fertile male of his species. Rika says that ends the long-running effort to breed the endangered species naturally. It also slams shut a chance for survival.
Saving a species that still currently lives is one thing. Going back and looking at saving a species that has already passed into extinction is a whole different issue.
We have just a spigot here of liquid nitrogen. We have a 3,000-gallon bulk tank out in the back.
The rhino's future is in the hands of researchers like Barbara Durant. She's filling a plastic tub with liquid nitrogen so she can show off a box of samples. She's the zoo's reproductive physiologist, and she's collected and frozen eggs and sperm from a lot of animals.
This is probably, well, it just so happens that this is Angelifu. No. It is. And I did not know he was here. And so I can hold this up for just a couple of seconds.
That's because samples have to stay colder than 135 degrees centigrade. They degrade quickly at warmer temperatures. These frozen samples could be a key to the northern white's future. Durant says the sperm might be used to impregnate a southern white rhino female, creating a blended offspring. Tissue cells might be used to develop northern white eggs for laboratory fertilization, or the frozen cells could be the basis for the development of a clone. But Durant says there are limitations.
We try to do the simplest possible technique that involves the least amount of manipulation, because we change the way genes express themselves when we manipulate cells.
Durant says the science for reviving the northern white rhino in the lab is still being developed, but there is enough there to create hope. If the 5 remaining rhinos die, the species can still persevere.
We can wait for the technology. We can wait. We can work on things in the meantime with non-endangered model species. We can develop our skills. We can communicate with the other communities that are doing this kind of work.
One key piece of the rhino's future lies in another nitrogen-cooled tank in the frozen zoo. It contains cell tissue from 12 individual northern white rhinos. That's a bigger pool of genetic diversity than what exists in the living population. Durant says researchers are working on techniques that will allow them to turn the tissue cells into eggs and sperm. She says that idea hasn't yet made the transition to the laboratory, but the potential energizes researchers.
We're getting the foundation pieces together. We're saving the things that we need to save, and then we go one step at a time. I think what drives us is the image in our imagination of Angelifu's babies sometime in the future. A little rhino prancing in in a field in South Africa that has Angie's genes.
The northern white rhino is likely rumbling toward extinction, but researchers say that disappearance may not be permanent. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
KPBS video journalist Nick McVicker helped produce that story. We have more on the endangered rhinos at kpbs.org.
I'm Gwen Eiffel. On the next News Hour, David Axelrod on his new book, looking back at years of advising President Obama and political messaging in the 21st century. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
Mesa College continues its campus makeover. Its new social and behavioral science building officially opened today. The school says the $40 million building will offer core college classes and more opportunities for students.
And what this building does is bring us state-of-the-art labs now where students can actually do research as part of their first 2 years of community college. And that's a very different environment.
Construction isn't over yet. In about 2 years, most of the center of campus will be brand new thanks to taxpayer bond money. Warmer weather continuing with high winds in the forecast. There are wind advisories up and warnings right through Friday for parts of the county. Along the coast, low 80s tomorrow and Friday, then cooling to the 70s by Saturday. Mid to upper 80s for the inland valleys for the next few days. Slightly cooler in the mountains, though, with a high wind warning there. 80s in the desert with lots of sunshine on Saturday. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.